questions from the governors? Governor Shumlin?
Listen, I want to thank all the panelists for their helpful suggestions, comments, and offers to cooperate with us. And I guess Governor Sandoval and I chaired this committee, I guess it was last year or the year before, last year. We had a very similar conversation, and I'm encouraged by the bipartisan acknowledgement that it is up to governors to act and make a difference on this issue. And I think we have a huge opportunity. And I think there's some reason for hope. As you probably know, the Senate has just voted out a bill that's going to go to the floor where we're going to get some bipartisan, it sounds like, federal cooperation, some good things. I'm interested in the Blue Cross Blue Shield report from Andrew Dreyfus, and I guess I would ask my fellow governors and the folks on this panel this question, but I want to preface it by saying, expressing some frustration in addition to the hope. Listen, we're all doing the same things, I think, in our states. We are building out treatment. We're lifting the veil on the stigma and treating it as a disease instead of a crime. We're doing criminal justice reform. We're getting naloxone time it'll take it so that people stop dying in the streets who shouldn't be dying in the streets. We're spending extraordinary resources. But I can tell you from someone who got out there early on this one, my frustration is that not all that much has changed in Vermont. And I bet you'll find this if you do all the things we're doing, you're going to have the same frustration. And so we have to ask the fundamental question, why are we here? Like, what has changed in America? Why do we have all these folks addicted to either painkillers or heroin or both? And I think we are hesitant as elected officials to look at how we got here. And I think we have to. So how did we get here? What has changed? In Congress, when I testified recently, after 3 U.S. senators, 2 Republicans and a Democrat, were working hard on this issue, 2 senators said, well, if we built higher walls on the Mexican border, we'd keep out the drug dealers that are bringing in this cheap heroin. And, my response was, we've had drug dealers on our borders for as long as I've been alive. And we probably always will, unfortunately. But what has changed? Like, why are they doing so well when they really weren't able to sell heroin in these quantities 20 years ago? And let's answer the question. It isn't the drug dealers on the South American border that are our biggest challenge. Believe it or not, yes, they're a big problem. But it is our drug dealers that are FDA approved selling this stuff in every pharmacy in America. There isn't a governor here who doesn't know that. So I started looking at the history of this. Listen, in the 1990s, when the FDA approved OxyContin, we have to remember, and I'm sympathetic to our medical community, that the manufacturer of OxyContin, let's talk about this for a second, Purdue, told our providers, nurses, docs, healthcare providers across America, we finally have a non-addictive painkiller. I mean, what a dream, right? Well, the folks started passing it out, and a lot of folks got on it and became addicted, and I think a lot of providers started going, wait a minute, this doesn't seem to be working out quite right. And they started looking at it, and this is a history we don't talk about much, but Purdue, the manufacturer, was taken to court. 3 of their executives were charged with lying to physicians that they had information that this was in fact addictive, but they told providers it wasn't. They paid a $70 million fine. Nobody went to jail. But in that same year, they sold $11 billion worth of painkillers. So, math is tough for some politicians, but last time I checked, there's 1,000 million in a billion, and so they paid a $70 million fine, 11 billion sold. My point is, we all talk about how we can spend more resources fixing the problem, and we aren't willing enough to look at the global challenge. The global challenge is this. In 2010, we prescribed enough OxyContin in America to keep every adult in America high for a month. That's just a fact. In 2012, we sold 250 million prescriptions of OxyContin. I mean, we know we only have 250 million people in America, right? That's a bottle for every living adult. The FDA just recently, and I say the FDA is part of our problem, they just approved Zohydro a couple of years ago, which is OxyContin on steroids, right? You can crush it, it's tamper resistant, you can shoot it, you can snort it. So we're right back there all over again. This year, they just approved, and on the Zohydro, it's important to note, their 13-member advisory panel, which is mostly docs, voted 11-3, do not approve Zohydro, because it'll be a bigger problem than OxyContin, but they did it anyway, right? Now this year, they approved OxyContin for kids. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So I guess I'll ask this question. If we know that the Blue Cross Blue Shield program in Massachusetts, the Painkillers Kill program is working, why wouldn't we say, as governors, to the Health and Human Services Committee here, let's figure out what the protocols are. I went out in my State of the State and I said, let's limit for minor procedures in Vermont, let's limit the number of painkillers, so OxyContins and the rest that you can pass out to 10, and then if you need more, you got to get more. Now, I'm not a doctor. You know, I shouldn't be doing this stuff, but I'm throwing it out there to try to start a conversation. I know Governor Baker's made a similar effort in Massachusetts, but guess what? And in all due respect for the AMA, all my docs come out, or a lot of them, and get on the radio and start saying, oh, what's this governor talking about? We got folks with chronic pain, you know? He shouldn't be talking about how many to prescribe. What does he know? He's not a doctor. And I keep saying, well, yeah, I plead guilty. But, you know, you're doing such a good job of it with your medical degrees. 250 million prescriptions in a year. I don't need to be a doctor. I don't need to go to medical school to know that that is not okay. We've got 110 people in America that die every day from this. You know, when we had that guy that, remember, he put the bomb in his boot or his shoe and he got on a plane, didn't go off. So we were all horrified and we started taking our shoes off when we go to the airport, right? So millions and millions of people, we take our shoes off because of this one guy that got on a plane and tried to get a bomb. If this was a terrorist threat, imagine what we'd be doing. So my point is, why don't we as governors, and I'm going to the comments of Governor Bevin started out from Kentucky, a new governor just elected. We probably don't agree on anything politically, is my guess, in fairness. But, you know, we agree on this stuff. We agree on this stuff. So why couldn't we say, we, the Health and Human Service Committee for the NGA, in a bipartisan spirit, are going to put together the prescribing protocols that we recommend for all 50 states. Maybe the governor of Vermont got it wrong. Maybe it's not 10. Maybe it's 9. Maybe it's 11.
I propose 3
let's do it.
For first-time
or 3,
prescriptions.
whatever. I mean, let's figure it out. But let's come up with a suggested list of protocols, and as governors, let's try drive them through our states so that we go after the source, the root of the problem that has led us into this crisis. And I say until we do that, now there's going to be huge resistance. You know, let's be honest about this. Big Pharma in this room, we've got a lot of friends with us. If I ask them to all raise their hands, raise your hand if you're working for a drug-related company, just out of curiosity. Come on, let's have the courage. How many? Great. See, they're concerned. They're good. They want to help us. If we can enlist them to take on this problem with us, we can solve it. But I say, we can build out treatment centers for the rest of our lives. We can get all the naloxone and we can buy up more. We can change attitudes. But if you're going to get hooked on this stuff, and we know how we pass it out, like candy in America, and then you know that you can get a much cheaper, pure form, which is heroin, folks are going to keep doing that because this is such an addictive, destructive, life-killing, destroying drug. So I say as governors, it's our responsibility, bipartisan, in this committee, let's take 3 weeks and come up with the protocols. We got Blue Cross Blue Shield seems to figure it out in Massachusetts. And let's say, you know, as governors, we're going back to our states and we're going to say, team, and we'll get a lot of hits for it. You know, the docs got on in Vermont radio right away. Oh, well, what does he know? You know, God, you know, we have people with chronic pain. I'm like, well, of course we do. No one's saying people with chronic pain should be in chronic pain. But you can't convince me that we got 250 million Americans in chronic pain. So let's do it together. And I'm asking this committee, governors, members of this panel, how could we put together a list of prescribing protocols that we could all embrace that would actually make a difference instead of dancing around this? And I want to close by this. Our biggest enemy, because, you know, I go back to the beautiful comments of Joanne Peterson. I have heard more stories like Joanne's, and so have we all. And you know what we do? We go, God, that's just so heart-wrenching. It's just so horrid. But, you know, we're up against some big financial pressures here. Just a few years ago, the combined pharmaceutical industry spent $235,000 per member of Congress lobbying for their views. Let's just get this out there. 435,000. That's big money. So I say if governors in a bipartisan basis can say, listen, we are above of all of that. We are going to come up with protocols that make a difference. I'm just asking us, do we want to do it? Do we have the courage? Do we have the heart to do it?
So